To our amazing viewers at Cheating Tales Lab, we'd love to hear, which part of the world are you joining us from? Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Ice Runner. Dale Morrison had spent 15 years navigating the treacherous Arctic shipping routes, but the ice field surrounding the Northern Titan cargo vessel felt different this time. Thicker, more unforgiving, like the world itself had frozen in anticipation of something terrible. At 42, Dale was one of the most experienced ice navigators in the commercial fleet, a man whose calloused hands could read the temperature of steel and whose eyes could spot safe passage through ice fields that would trap lesser crews for months. The Northern Titan was carrying a cargo of rare earth minerals from the Canadian Arctic mines to Rotterdam, a journey that would normally take 3 weeks. They were 2 weeks in, with the ship locked in unexpected ice formations that had appeared overnight, when Dale received the call that would change everything. Dale's background was forged in hardship. Raised in the shipyards of Norfolk, Virginia, he joined the Navy at 18, serving 2 tours in submarine warfare before transitioning to commercial shipping. His marriage to Lisa Hartwell had been a whirlwind romance during a shore leave in Baltimore 12 years ago. She was working as a dental hygienist then, beautiful and vivacious, with auburn hair that caught sunlight like copper wire. Their son Connor had arrived 2 years later, and Dale had believed he'd found his anchor in the storm of life. But the demands of Arctic shipping meant Dale was away for months at a time, leaving Lisa to raise Connor largely alone in their modest home in Portsmouth. Dale sent most of his substantial earnings home. Arctic navigators commanded premium wages and thought he was building security for his family. He never suspected he was building something else entirely: resentment, loneliness, an opportunity for betrayal. The satellite communicator crackled to life just after midnight, cutting through the howling Arctic wind. Captain Hendricks, a grizzled Scotsman who'd been running ice routes since Dale was in diapers, handed him the device with a grim expression. "Personal emergency call, Morrison. Take it in the radio room." Dale's heart clenched. Emergency calls in the Arctic usually meant death. He took the communicator with hands that had remained steady through torpedo attacks and Category 5 storms, but now trembled slightly as he pressed the receiver to his ear. Chapter 2. The Call. "Mr. Morrison? This is Jenny Rodriguez, charge nurse at Portsmouth General Hospital. We have your son Connor in our emergency room." The words hit Dale like a rogue wave. Through the satellite connection, he could hear the familiar chaos of a hospital ER. Monitors beeping, urgent voices, the squeak of gurney wheels. But beneath it all, he heard something that made his blood turn colder than the Arctic ice around him. His 12-year-old son's voice, weak but audible. "Mama's new boyfriend did this when I told him to leave Mom's bedroom." Dale's vision tunneled. His son's words repeated in his mind as the nurse continued speaking about injuries, broken ribs, a concussion, severe bruising. But Dale barely heard her. His boy, his Connor, beaten by some man who was sleeping in Dale's bed, in Dale's house, with Dale's wife. "Sir? Mr. Morrison? Are you there?" Dale forced himself to focus. "How bad is he hurt?" "He's stable, but he's asking for you. The injuries are consistent with, well, with physical abuse. We've contacted Child Protective Services, and there's a police investigation underway." "Where's my wife?" A pause. She's here, sir. In the waiting room." Dale could hear it in the nurse's voice. Judgment, pity, perhaps disgust. Lisa was there, but their son was asking for his father, the man who was trapped in ice 1,000 miles away. "Who did this to him?" "I can't give you details over the phone, sir, but the police will want to speak with you." "When can you get here?" Dale looked out the porthole at the endless white expanse. The ice had them locked tight, and even with the ship's reinforced hull and powerful engines, they wouldn't break free for at least another week. Under normal circumstances, he'd be helpless, forced to wait while his son recovered in a hospital bed, while his wife sat in a waiting room, while some stranger who'd beaten his child walked free. But Dale Morrison was not a normal man, and these were not normal circumstances. "Tell Connor I'm coming," Dale said, his voice deadly calm. "Tell him Daddy's coming home." After ending the call, Dale found Captain Hendricks on the bridge. "I need to leave the ship." Hendricks looked at him like he'd suggested swimming to shore. "Dale, we're locked in solid ice, and the nearest airstrip is 200 miles south. There's no way." "There's always a way." Dale's voice carried a tone Hendricks had never heard before, something that reminded the captain that Dale Morrison had once hunted enemy submarines in waters more dangerous than these. I need the emergency beacon and the survival gear. You'll die out there. Dale's smile was colder than the wind howling outside. No, I won't. But someone else might. Chapter 3. The Journey Home. What Captain Hendricks didn't know, what very few people knew, was that Dale Morrison had connections that went far beyond commercial shipping. During his Navy years, he'd worked with a classified Arctic survival program, training special operations teams for cold weather missions. One of his former teammates, Sergeant Major Roy Pettigrew, now ran a private military contracting firm specializing in extreme environment operations. Using the ship's satellite phone, Dale made a call that would have been impossible for any civilian. Within 6 hours, a specialized Arctic rescue helicopter appeared through the perpetual twilight, its rotors cutting through air so cold it could shatter steel. The pilot, a lean woman with ice-blue eyes named Captain Torres, barely spoke as she helped Dale load his gear. Roy says you need a lift to Portsmouth, she said as they lifted off from the ship's helipad. He also says to tell you that whatever you're planning, he didn't hear about it. The flight took 18 hours, with 2 refueling stops at remote military installations that officially didn't exist. During those long hours over the Arctic landscape, Dale had time to think, to plan, and to let his anger crystallize into something harder and more focused than rage, purpose. By the time they reached the military airfield outside Norfolk, Dale had made several more calls. His brother-in-law Mike, a Portsmouth police detective, had filled him in on the details. The man who'd beaten Connor was Rick Donnelly, a 35-year-old construction foreman with a history of bar fights and domestic disturbances. He'd been dating Lisa for 8 months, which meant the affair had started while Dale was on his previous Arctic run. But Mike had given him more than just information. He'd given him an opportunity. Rick's been careful, Mike had said during their encrypted call. No official complaints until now, and Lisa isn't talking. But word is he's been dealing with some unsavory characters lately. Construction's been slow, and he's been taking side jobs that might not be entirely legal. Dale smiled at that. A man with secrets was a man with vulnerabilities, and Dale had learned long ago how to exploit vulnerabilities. The final piece of his hastily forming plan came from an unexpected source, Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne, the emergency room physician treating Connor. During a brief phone conversation, she'd mentioned something that made Dale's blood run even colder. Your son has old injuries too, Mr. Morrison. Healed fractures, faded bruises. This has been going on for a while. Which meant Lisa had been covering for Rick, protecting the man who was systematically abusing their child, while Dale sent money home and trusted his wife to keep their son safe. As the military transport touched down at the airfield, Dale Morrison was no longer the man who'd left on the Northern Titan. That man had been a husband and father. This man was something else entirely, a weapon forged in ice and betrayal, aimed at the heart of everyone who had hurt his son. Captain Torres handed him a duffel bag as he prepared to disembark. From Roy, she said. He says you'll know what to do with it. Dale hefted the bag, feeling the familiar weight of equipment he hadn't touched in years. Roy Pettigrew had always been good at anticipating needs. As Dale walked across the tarmac toward the waiting rental car, arranged by another call, another favor from his past, he could feel the last traces of his old life falling away like ice breaking from a hull. Behind him lay the frozen Arctic, the ship, the life of a man who'd trusted too much and watched too little. Ahead lay Portsmouth, his broken son, his faithless wife, and Rick Donnelly. Dale Morrison was coming home, and he was bringing winter with him. Chapter 4. Homecoming. Portsmouth General Hospital smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams when Dale walked through the emergency room doors at 3:17 a.m. He'd been traveling for nearly 24 hours, but adrenaline and purpose kept him moving. The duty nurse, recognizing his name, directed him to room 314 without question. Connor was awake when Dale entered, his small face swollen and discolored, one arm in a cast. But his eyes, Dale's own dark brown eyes, lit up when he saw his father. Dad? You came. Dale's heart shattered and rebuilt itself in the space of those 3 words. He sat carefully on the edge of the hospital bed, mindful of his son's injuries. Of course I came, buddy. I'll always come for you. Mom said you were trapped in the ice. She said you couldn't get home. Your mom was wrong about a lot of things. Dale brushed a strand of dark hair from Connor's forehead, his touch gentle despite the rage burning in his chest. Tell me what happened. The story came out in halting whispers. Rick Donnelly had been staying at their house for months, sleeping in Dale's bed, eating food bought with Dale's money. At first, he'd been nice to Connor, bringing gifts and taking him to baseball games. But as time went on, Rick had become possessive, jealous of any attention Lisa paid to her son, angry when Connor asked about his father or when Dale called home. The beating had started 3 days ago when Connor found Rick going through Dale's home office, looking through personal papers and family documents. When Connor asked what he was doing, Rick had told him to mind his own business. When Connor said he was going to tell his mother, Rick had lost control. He said I was a little snitch, Connor whispered. He said if I told anyone about what he was doing in your office, he'd make sure you never came home again. But when he hit me the first time, I couldn't help it. I screamed. Mom came running, and I told her what he'd been doing. What was he doing in my office? Connor's voice dropped even lower. Looking through your files. Mom's files too. And he had a camera, Dad. He was taking pictures of things. Dale's jaw tightened. Rick wasn't just a violent drunk. He was searching for something, documenting something. Which meant this wasn't random. It was planned. A soft knock interrupted them. Detective Mike Brennan, Dale's brother-in-law, stood in the doorway. Mike was a 20-year veteran of the Portsmouth PD, a stocky Irish-American with prematurely gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. Dale, glad you made it back. They stepped into the hallway, leaving Connor with a pediatric nurse who'd volunteered to sit with him. Where's Lisa? Dale asked. Went home an hour ago. Said she needed to get some things. Mike's expression was carefully neutral, but Dale caught the subtext. And Rick? Released on bail this morning. Assault charges, but his lawyer worked some magic. He's staying at a motel on Effingham Street, the Anchor Inn. Room 237. Dale committed the address to memory. What else? Mike glanced around, then lowered his voice. There's something you need to know. Rick's been asking questions about you around town. Your shipping schedule, your finances, when you're home, and when you're not. And that's not the strangest part. What is? 3 weeks ago, Rick made inquiries about hiring a private investigator. Specifically, he wanted someone to look into maritime insurance policies and what happens to shipping benefits when a crew member dies overseas. The pieces clicked into place in Dale's mind like tumblers in a lock. Rick wasn't just sleeping with his wife. He was planning something bigger. Something that required Dale to be out of the picture permanently. You think he's planning to have me killed? I think he's been planning something, and your wife's been helping. Mike handed him a manila envelope. These are copies of documents found in Rick's apartment during the search. I probably shouldn't be showing you these, but Dale opened the envelope. Inside were photocopies of his life insurance policy, his shipping contracts, and most damning of all, a handwritten letter in Lisa's script detailing his schedule, his routes, and the fact that maritime accidents in the Arctic were often impossible to investigate. How long? Dale asked. Best guess? They've been working on this for at least 6 months. Maybe longer. Dale stared at the documents, feeling something cold and final settle in his chest. This wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just abuse of his son. This was attempted murder, his murder, with his wife as an accomplice. Mike, I need you to do something for me. Depends what it is. I need you to forget this conversation happened. I need you to forget you saw me tonight. And I need you to make sure Connor is safe. Mike studied his face. Dale, whatever you're thinking. I'm not thinking anything. I'm just a concerned father visiting his injured son. Dale's voice was perfectly calm, but Mike had known him long enough to recognize the danger lurking beneath the surface. Some things can't be undone, Dale. Some things shouldn't be forgiven. As Dale walked back toward Connor's room, his phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at the marina, slip 47. Come alone. Rick Donnelly wanted to talk. How thoughtful of him to save Dale the trouble of hunting him down. Chapter 5, The Trap. Slip 47 at the Portsmouth Marina housed a 36-foot cabin cruiser named Second Chance. Ironic, considering Rick Donnelly was about to lose his first and only chance at walking away from this situation alive. Dale arrived at the marina just after dawn, his breath visible in the cold morning air. The duffel bag Roy had given him was secured in his rental car, but Dale carried something more subtle. A ceramic knife that wouldn't trigger metal detectors, and a small device that would record their conversation. Rick was waiting on the boat's deck, smoking a cigarette with hands that shook slightly. He was bigger than Dale had expected, 6'2", broad shoulders, the kind of build that came from swinging hammers and intimidating people who couldn't fight back. His face bore the marks of recent hard living, bloodshot eyes, a complexion that spoke of too much alcohol and too little sleep. "You actually came," Rick said, flicking his cigarette into the water. "Lisa said you were too much of a coward to face me." Dale stepped aboard without invitation, his movements casual but purposeful. "Lisa says a lot of things. Most of them lies. She told me about you, Morrison, the great maritime hero, sending money home while his wife gets lonely and his kid gets in the way." Rick's smile was ugly. "She also told me about those insurance policies. Nice nest egg for a widow. Is that what this is about? Money. Money's part of it. But mostly it's about Lisa and me being tired of waiting for you to disappear." Rick pulled a pistol from his jacket, a cheap .38 that had seen better days. "See, we figured nature would take care of our problem. Arctic shipping's dangerous work. Accidents happen. But when we heard you were coming home, you decided to handle it personally. I decided to give you a choice. Walk away, Morrison. Disappear. File for divorce. Give Lisa everything and vanish. Do that, and maybe your kid doesn't have any more accidents." Dale's smile was winter cold. "You made a mistake, Rick." "What mistake?" "You hurt my son." The attack was so fast Rick never saw it coming. Dale's hand closed around the gun, twisting Rick's wrist until bones cracked. The weapon clattered to the deck as Rick screamed and stumbled backward. Dale followed, his ceramic knife appearing in his other hand like magic. "You made two mistakes, actually," Dale continued conversationally as Rick clutched his broken wrist. "The first was thinking I'd run. The second was meeting me somewhere isolated where no one will hear you scream. You're crazy. You can't just—" The knife traced a line across Rick's cheek, deep enough to scar, but not fatal. "Yet, I've killed men in closer quarters than this, Rick. Submarines don't offer much room for error." Dale's voice remained perfectly calm. "But I'm not going to kill you. Not yet. What do you want?" "Information. How long have you and Lisa been planning this?" "I don't know what you're talking about." The knife moved again, this time across Rick's other cheek. Rick howled. 8 months, he gasped. "It was her idea, man. She said you had big life insurance, said we could be together if something happened to you on one of your trips." "What was the plan?" "She was going to call your company, report you missing during the ice storm. Say you went outside to check something and never came back. Maritime accidents happen all the time in the Arctic. They'd never find a body." Dale nodded slowly. "It was a good plan, actually. Elegant in its simplicity. In the chaos of an Arctic storm, crew members had been lost before. Their bodies never recovered from the ice and darkness. But I came home early. She called me, panicked. Said you were on your way back, that we needed a new plan." Rick was sobbing now, blood and tears mixing on his face. "I told her we'd handle it when you got here. Make it look like an accident or a robbery. But then your kid. Connor saw you going through my files. He was supposed to be at school. I was just looking for more insurance information, maybe some bank account numbers. The little brat came home sick and caught me." Dale's hand tightened on the knife handle. "So you beat a 12-year-old boy to keep your secret." "I didn't mean to hurt him that bad. But he said he was going to tell, and—" The knife moved once more, this time across Rick's throat. Not deep enough to kill, but deep enough to send blood streaming down his shirt and terror flooding his eyes. "Here's what's going to happen, Rick. You're going to disappear. Tonight. You're going to empty your bank accounts, get in your truck, and drive until you reach a place where I'll never find you. And if I ever see you again, if you ever contact Lisa again, if you ever even think about my family again, I will hunt you down and finish what we started here. You can't just— I can do anything I want." Dale's voice dropped to a whisper. "Because nobody knows I'm here. The official record shows I'm still trapped on a cargo ship in the Arctic. And if you disappear tonight, who's going to connect your departure to a man who's supposedly 1,000 miles away?" Rick nodded frantically, blood soaking his shirt. "Good. Now get off this boat and out of my city." As Rick stumbled away, clutching his wounds, Dale pulled out his phone and made a call. "Roy? It's Dale. I need that other favor we discussed." Chapter 6. The Setup. Lisa Morrison was pacing the living room of their modest 2-story house on Maple Street when Dale walked through the front door at noon. She spun around at the sound of the key in the lock, her face cycling through surprise, guilt, and something that might have been relief. Dale, how did you? The ship was trapped in ice. Emergency helicopter. Dale closed the door behind him and set down his duffel bag, taking in the scene. His home felt different, contaminated by the presence of another man. Rick's cologne still lingered in the air, and Dale could see unfamiliar items scattered around. A leather jacket on the chair that wasn't his, work boots by the door that were too big to be Connor's. Lisa looked different too. Her auburn hair was shorter, styled differently. She'd lost weight, and she was wearing makeup even though it was the middle of the day. She looked like a woman trying to impress someone, and that someone wasn't her husband. "How's Connor?" Dale asked. He's better. The doctors say he can come home tomorrow." Lisa twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit Dale remembered from their early years together. "Dale, about what happened? About Rick beating our son?" She flinched. "It wasn't like that. He was drunk, and Connor was being difficult. Our 12-year-old son was being difficult. So your boyfriend put him in the hospital?" "He's not my boyfriend." The lie came too quickly, too forcefully. "He's just a friend who's been helping around the house while you were gone." Dale moved deeper into the room, and Lisa unconsciously stepped back. "A friend who sleeps in our bed? I don't know what Connor told you, but he told me enough." Dale's voice remained calm, but his eyes were ice cold. "He told me about Rick going through my office. About the camera. About the threats." Lisa's face went pale. "Dale, you have to understand." "I understand perfectly." Dale pulled out his phone and played a recording. Rick's voice, frightened and bleeding, confessing to their plan. Lisa's face went white as she heard her lover's voice describing their plot to murder her husband. "That's not. He's lying. He's trying to." "To what?" "Frame you for conspiracy to commit murder." Dale turned off the recording. "Because that's exactly what this is, Lisa. You and Rick planned to have me killed so you could collect my life insurance." "No, it wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" Lisa sank into the couch, her face in her hands. When she looked up, tears were streaming down her cheeks, but Dale felt nothing. No sympathy, no pity, no trace of the love he'd once felt for this woman. "I was lonely, Dale. You're gone for months at a time, and I felt like I was raising Connor alone. Rick made me feel special, wanted." She wiped her eyes, smearing mascara. "The insurance thing, that was just talk. Fantasy. We never actually planned to hurt you. You gave him my shipping schedule. You wrote down my routes, my contracts, everything he'd need to arrange an accident. I don't know why I did that." Dale pulled out a manila folder and dropped it on the coffee table. Inside were photocopies of documents found in Rick's apartment, including Lisa's handwritten notes about Dale's life insurance policies and her detailed analysis of how much money she'd receive if he died overseas. "This is your handwriting, Lisa." She stared at the papers, her face crumbling. Oh God, what have I done? You plotted to murder your husband and endangered our son." Dale's voice was clinical, detached. "The question now is what happens next." "What do you mean?" Dale sat across from her, his posture relaxed but his eyes never leaving her face. "Rick's gone. Left town this morning. Won't be coming back." "Gone? What did you do to him?" "I gave him a choice. Leave or face the consequences. He chose to leave. You can't just threaten people like that." "I'll call the police." "And tell them what?" "That your co-conspirator in a murder plot has disappeared." Dale smiled coldly. "I don't think you want to involve the police in this, Lisa." She stared at him, finally beginning to understand the depth of her situation. "What do you want?" "I want a divorce. I want full custody of Connor. And I want you to disappear from our lives. You can't take Connor from me. He's my son too." "Is he?" "Because when your boyfriend was beating him, you didn't protect him. When he was screaming for help, you chose Rick over Connor. When our son was lying in a hospital bed asking for his father, you were here planning how to spend my life insurance money." Lisa's face twisted with desperation. "I love Connor. I made mistakes, but I love my son. You love yourself more." Dale leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "And Connor deserves better than a mother who would choose a violent criminal over her own child's safety. I won't give up my rights. I'll fight you in court." "With what?" "The evidence I have could put you in prison for conspiracy to commit murder, child endangerment, accessory to assault." Dale's smile was predatory. "How much sympathy do you think a jury will have for a woman who helped plan her husband's death while her boyfriend was beating her child? You're bluffing. Try me." The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of a marriage dying and a family destroyed. Finally, Lisa spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "What kind of divorce settlement? You get nothing. The house is in my name, bought with my money. Connor stays with me. You sign away all your parental rights. I can't survive with nothing. That's not my problem anymore." Dale stood up, looming over her. "You made your choice, Lisa. You chose Rick over Connor, chose money over loyalty, chose betrayal over love. Now live with the consequences. And if I refuse?" Dale pulled out his phone and showed her a video file. On the screen, Rick's bloody face filled the frame as he confessed to their murder plot, naming Lisa as the mastermind. "Then this goes to the police, along with all the documentary evidence. You'll spend the next 20 years in prison, and Connor will know exactly what kind of mother you really are." Lisa stared at the phone, her face a mask of defeat and growing hatred. "You bastard. You can't just destroy my life like this." "I'm not destroying your life, Lisa. I'm saving what's left of it." Dale pocketed the phone. "Sign the papers, disappear, and I'll make sure Connor believes you left because you couldn't handle being a mother. Refuse, and he'll know the truth, that his mother tried to have his father murdered. I need time to think. You have until tomorrow morning. Connor comes home from the hospital at noon. I want you gone before then." As Dale walked toward the stairs, Lisa called after him, her voice filled with venom. "You think you've won? You think this is over?" Dale paused on the bottom step, looking back at the woman who had once been his wife, his partner, the mother of his child. Now she was just another enemy to be neutralized. "It's over, Lisa. You just haven't accepted it yet." Chapter 7. The Reckoning. Dale found the divorce papers on the kitchen counter the next morning, signed but torn in half. Lisa's wedding ring lay beside them, along with a note written in her familiar handwriting. "This isn't over. You'll pay for what you've done." She was gone, her closets emptied, her personal items missing. But her departure felt less like surrender and more like a tactical retreat. Dale had expected this. Lisa had always been stubborn, and cornered animals were often the most dangerous. His phone rang as he was brewing coffee. Roy Pettigrew's voice was calm but urgent. "Dale, we have a problem. Your wife made some calls last night. Reached out to some people who might be willing to cause you trouble." "What kind of people?" "The kind Rick was involved with. Turns out your friend was deeper in debt than you knew. Owed money to some very unforgiving individuals." Dale's jaw tightened. "How deep?" "Deep enough that they might be interested in collecting from his associates." And Lisa just made herself an associate by offering to pay Rick's debts in exchange for a favor. "What kind of favor?" "The kind that involves making sure you have an accident before the divorce is finalized." Dale wasn't surprised. Lisa had always been resourceful when backed into a corner. But she'd made a critical error. She'd involved criminals who didn't understand the kind of man they were dealing with. "Where?" "Industrial District. There's an abandoned warehouse on Pier Road where Rick used to meet his contacts. Lisa's supposed to deliver the money tonight at midnight." "How much money?" $50,000. "She cleaned out your joint savings account this morning." Dale smiled coldly. He'd been wondering when Lisa would make that move. "Roy, I need." "Already done. The warehouse is being watched. The men Lisa hired are being tracked. And I've got a team standing by in case things go sideways. I work alone." "Not tonight, you don't. These aren't drunk construction workers, Dale. These are professional criminals with nothing to lose." Dale considered this. Roy was right. This situation had escalated beyond a simple domestic dispute. Lisa had brought genuine killers into the equation, which meant Connor was potentially in danger even after she was gone. "What's the plan?" "Simple. We let Lisa make the meat, let her pay the money, and then we make sure these gentlemen understand that their services are no longer required." "And Lisa?" "That depends on what she does tonight." Dale hung up and drove to the hospital to collect Connor. His son looked better. The swelling had gone down, and his eyes were brighter. But Dale could see the lingering fear, the way Connor flinched when strangers approached, the careful way he moved to protect his injured ribs. "Where's Mom?" Connor asked as Dale helped him into the car. "She had to go away for a while. Because of what Rick did." Dale met his son's eyes in the rearview mirror. "Because of choices she made. Adults sometimes make bad choices, Connor, and those choices have consequences." "Is she coming back?" "No, buddy. She's not." Connor was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Good. I don't want to see her anymore." The simple honesty of it hit Dale harder than he'd expected. His 12-year-old son had already written off his mother, had already understood that some betrayals were too deep to forgive. They spent the afternoon setting up Connor's room, bringing in a television, stocking the mini fridge with his favorite snacks, making sure everything he needed was within easy reach. Dale arranged for Mrs. Patterson, their elderly neighbor, to stay with Connor that evening. "I have to go out for a few hours tonight," Dale told his son as they shared pizza for dinner. "Mrs. Patterson will be here, and I'll be back before you wake up. You're going to see Mom, aren't you?" "Yes." "Are you going to hurt her?" Dale studied his son's face, seeing a maturity there that no 12-year-old should possess. "I'm going to make sure she never hurts us again." Connor nodded solemnly. "Okay, Dad." At 11:30 that night, Dale parked his rental car 3 blocks from the warehouse district and walked through the shadows toward Pier Road. The area was abandoned, filled with empty buildings and rusted equipment from Portsmouth's industrial past. Perfect for clandestine meetings, and perfect for making people disappear. The warehouse sat at the end of a dead-end street, its windows boarded up and its loading dock chained shut. But Dale could see lights inside, movement in the shadows. Lisa was early, or her hired killers were being cautious. Dale's earpiece crackled with Roy's voice. "Overwatch in position. Count 3 vehicles, Lisa's Honda, and 2 others. Estimated 6 to 8 hostiles inside." "Understood." Dale moved closer, using the abandoned equipment as cover. Through a broken window, he could see Lisa standing in the center of the warehouse floor, a duffel bag at her feet. She was surrounded by 4 men. Not the professional criminals Roy had expected, but street-level thugs who looked like they'd be more comfortable robbing convenience stores than executing complex murder plots. Their leader was a thin man with neck tattoos and the kind of hollow-eyed look that came from too much methamphetamine. He was counting money from Lisa's bag while his companions watched the doors. "Nice doing business with you, lady," the leader said, his voice carrying clearly in the empty space. "Your husband's gonna have a real unfortunate accident. Make it look like a robbery gone wrong." "Just make sure Connor isn't there when it happens," Lisa replied. "I don't want my son to see it." "Lady, we ain't monsters. Kid won't see nothing." Dale's anger crystallized into something cold and focused. Lisa was willing to have him murdered, but she drew the line at traumatizing Connor. How thoughtful of her. The leader gestured to his men. "Tommy, you and Jake take the front. Me and Rico will hit him from behind when he comes home tomorrow night." They were planning to ambush him at his own house, with Connor inside. That changed everything. Dale spoke into his microphone. "Roy, they're planning to hit my house. Take them now." "Negative. Too many civilians in the line of fire. We need to separate them." But Dale was already moving. He'd heard enough, and Connor's safety trumped everything else. He pulled the ceramic knife from his jacket and stepped through the broken window into the warehouse. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice echoing in the empty space. "I believe you were looking for me." Chapter 8, The Resolution. The warehouse erupted into chaos as 4 drug dealers spun toward Dale's voice, hands reaching for weapons. But Dale had spent years moving through cramped submarine corridors in combat situations, and these street thugs had never faced anything like him. The first man, Tommy, managed to clear his pistol from his waistband before Dale's knife found his throat. The second, Jake, got off one wild shot that shattered concrete before Dale broke his arm and relieved him of his weapon. The leader and Rico were smarter, using Lisa as a human shield while they tried to maneuver for clean shots. But they'd made a fatal error in positioning. They'd put Lisa between themselves and their only exit. "Stay back," the leader shouted, pressing his gun to Lisa's temple. "I'll kill her." "Go ahead," Dale said calmly, advancing slowly with Jake's pistol in his hand. "Save me the trouble." Lisa's eyes went wide with shock and terror. She'd expected Dale to negotiate, to try to save her life. She'd never imagined that her husband, the man she'd lived with for 12 years, would be willing to let her die. "You're bluffing," Rico said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Ask your friends if I'm bluffing." Dale gestured toward Tommy and Jake, one dead and the other unconscious and bleeding. The standoff lasted 30 seconds before Roy Pettigrew's voice echoed through the warehouse. "Drop your weapons. You're surrounded." Red laser dots appeared on the walls around the leader and Rico as Roy's team moved into position. Professional snipers versus amateur criminals was no contest. Both men dropped their guns and raised their hands. As Roy's men secured the scene, Dale approached Lisa. Her face was pale with shock, mascara streaked down her cheeks, her carefully styled hair disheveled from the struggle. "You came," she whispered. "I thought, when you said you'd let them kill me. I came for them, not for you." Dale's voice was empty of warmth. "They threatened my son. That's the only reason you're still breathing. Dale, please. I know I made mistakes, but we can work this out. We can still." "There is no we, Lisa. There never was. You proved that when you chose a violent criminal over our son, when you plotted my murder, when you hired killers to eliminate the father of your child." Lisa grabbed his arm, desperation making her voice shrill. "I was desperate. You don't understand what it was like, being alone all the time, feeling like a single mother. Millions of military and maritime wives handle separation without plotting murder. I love you. I made mistakes, but I love you." Dale looked down at her hand on his arm, then into her eyes. "No, you don't. You love what I represented: security, money, respectability. You never loved me, and you certainly never loved Connor enough to protect him." Roy approached, his men having secured the scene. 2 drug dealers were dead, 2 in custody, and a significant amount of evidence had been recovered, including recorded conversations and financial records that would put the survivors away for decades. "What about her?" Roy asked, nodding toward Lisa. "Conspiracy to commit murder, accessory to attempted murder, child endangerment." Dale's voice was clinical. "She'll serve time." "No." Lisa pulled away from Dale, her face twisting with rage. "I won't go to prison. I won't let you destroy my life." She lunged for one of the discarded weapons, but Dale caught her wrist before she could reach it. For a moment, they stood frozen, husband and wife, destroyer and destroyed, locked in a final moment of truth. "You destroyed your own life, Lisa. You chose betrayal over loyalty, chose money over love, chose a criminal over your own son." Dale's grip tightened on her wrist. "And now you'll live with the consequences. I'll tell everyone what kind of man you really are. I'll tell them how you threatened Rick, how you killed those men tonight. Tell them." Dale's smile was winter cold. "Tell them about the father who crossed the Arctic to save his son. Tell them about the husband who stopped a murder plot. Tell them about the man who protected his family from criminals. Connor will hate you for this. When he's older, when he understands." Connor already understands. He understands that his mother let her boyfriend beat him. He understands that she chose a criminal over her own child. He understands that some betrayals are unforgivable. As Roy's men led Lisa away in handcuffs, she turned back one final time. "This isn't over, Dale. I'll find a way to make you pay." "It's over," Dale said quietly. "You're just too broken to see it." Chapter 9, New Beginnings. 6 months later, Dale stood in the kitchen of their house on Maple Street, packing lunches for Connor's first day at his new school. They decided to make a fresh start in a different city, Norfolk, where Dale's shipping company was headquartered and where Connor could attend a private school with excellent counseling services. Connor's physical injuries had healed completely, but the emotional scars would take longer. He was seeing a therapist twice a week, a kind woman named Dr. Sarah Williams who specialized in childhood trauma. Slowly, carefully, Connor was learning to trust again, to feel safe again. The legal proceedings had been swift and decisive. Lisa pleaded guilty to conspiracy charges and received a 15-year sentence. Rick Donnelly had never been found. Officially, he'd simply disappeared, another drifter who'd moved on to parts unknown. The surviving drug dealers had been sentenced to lengthy prison terms for attempted murder. Dale's shipping company had been understanding about his extended leave, and his reputation in the maritime community remained intact. In fact, his willingness to risk everything to save his son had earned him a certain respect among his peers. He'd been offered a promotion to fleet coordinator, a position that would keep him shore-based so he could be present for Connor's teenage years. "Dad." Connor appeared in the kitchen doorway, backpack slung over his shoulder. At 13 now, he was taller, more serious, but the shadows had begun to fade from his eyes. "Ready for the new school?" "I guess." "You sure about the story?" They'd agreed on a cover story for Connor's new classmates. His parents had divorced, his mother had moved away, and he was starting fresh with his father. Simple, true enough, and it avoided the more traumatic details. "Just remember, you don't owe anyone explanations about your family. If someone asks too many questions, refer them to me." "What if someone finds out about Mom? About what really happened?" Dale knelt down to meet his son's eyes. "Then we tell them the truth. That your mother made bad choices, that sometimes people we love disappoint us, and that families aren't always what they seem to be. Do you miss her? It was a question Connor asked periodically, usually when he was feeling conflicted about his own lack of grief over his mother's absence. I miss who I thought she was, Dale answered honestly. But the woman I thought I married never really existed. The real Lisa, the one who could plot murder and endanger her own child. I don't miss her at all. I don't miss her either. Is that wrong? No, son. That's survival. They drove to Connor's new school in comfortable silence, the radio playing softly in the background. Dale parked in the circular drive and watched as other parents dropped off their children, normal families going about their normal routines, untouched by betrayal and violence. You know I'll always come for you, right? Dale said as Connor prepared to get out. No matter where I am, no matter what's happening, if you need me, I'll find a way to get to you. I know, Dad. Like when you came home from the ice. Exactly like that. Connor hugged him, something that had taken months to rebuild after the trauma, and headed toward the school building. Dale watched until his son disappeared through the front doors, then pulled out his phone to check his messages. There was one new voicemail from an unknown number. Dale almost deleted it without listening, but something made him press play. Lisa's voice filled the car, older and harder than he remembered. Dale? It's me. I'm out on early release. Good behavior. I know you moved, but I found you. I found Connor's new school. You can't hide from me forever. Dale ended the call and sat quietly for a moment, processing this information. Then he scrolled through his contacts and found Roy Pettigrew's number. Roy? It's Dale. I need another favor. What's the situation? Lisa's out of prison. She's made contact. How do you want to handle it? Dale watched through the school windows as Connor walked down a hallway, laughing with a new classmate. His son was healing, building a new life, learning to trust the world again. Permanently, Dale said. Understood. Same terms as before. Same terms. She threatens my son. She forfeits her right to exist. Dale ended the call and started the car. He had work to do, preparations to make. Lisa had been given every opportunity to walk away, to disappear, to start over somewhere else. Instead, she'd chosen to return, to threaten the family she'd already betrayed once. She'd made her choice. Now she'd live, or die, with the consequences. As Dale drove toward his office, his phone buzzed with a text from Connor. Thanks for the fresh start, Dad. I love you. Dale smiled, the first genuine smile he'd felt in months. Whatever happened with Lisa, whatever measures he had to take to protect his son, it would all be worth it. Connor was safe, Connor was healing, and Connor was his. The rest was just details. Outside, storm clouds gathered over Norfolk Harbor, and Dale Morrison began planning for one final winter. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.